Aleksandr Gelyevich Dugin is a Russian political scientist whose views have been described as fascist and who calls to hasten the end of times with all-out war. He has close ties with the Kremlin and the Russian military, having served as an advisor to State Duma Speaker and key member of the ruling United Russia Party Sergei Naryshkin.Dugin was the leading organizer of the National Bolshevik Party, National Bolshevik Front, and Eurasia Party. He is the author of more than 30 books, among them Foundations of Geopolitics and the Fourth Political Theory. He focuses on the restoration of the Russian Empire, through bringing back control over former Soviet republics such as Georgia and Ukraine, and unification with Russian-speaking territories, especially eastern Ukraine and Crimea. In the Kremlin, Duggan represents the War Party, a division in the heart of the leadership concerning Ukraine, and is seen as the driving conceptual force behind Vladimir Putin's initiative for the annexation of Crimea by Russia. In 2014 he expressed the view that the war between Russia and Ukraine is inevitable and appealed for Putin to start in military intervention in eastern Ukraine, believing that the so-called Fifth Column has been working for 2 decades to destroy Russia's sovereignty from the inside. He proposed in 2014 to strip all dissidents, including musician Andrei Makarovich, of the Russian citizenship and deport them from the country. Early life and education. Duggan was born in Moscow, into the family of a colonel-general of the Soviet military intelligence and candidate of law Aleksandrovich Dugin, and his wife Galina, a doctor and candidate of medicine. In 1979 he entered the Moscow Aviation Institute, but did not graduate due to his association with thinking contrary to the ongoing regime, which caused him to be expelled from the institute. A self-taught polyglot, he became an avid reader of a large array of works in his fields of interest, from Middle Age and Renaissance European authors to Oriental studies, translating to Russian from English, French, and German in some instances, and also writings by Julius Evola and René Guénon. Religious traditionalism, conservatism, Hermeticism and poetry were topics followed closely by Duggan and a group formed with philosophers, thinkers also interested in traditionalism. Gadajamal, Evgeny Golovin, Yuri Mamleyev, Vladimir Stepanov, and Sergei Gigilkin. He graduated in economics and management at Novokaukask Meliorative State Academy in the Rostov Oblast in 1999, and defended his postgraduate degree in philosophy in Rostov-on-Don with the dissertation, The Evolution of Paradigmatic Foundations of Science, in 2000, and the PhD in the Faculty of Sociology in the same university in 2004 with the theme, The Transformation of the Political Structures and Institutions in the Process of Modernization of the Civil Society. In 1998 Duggan, Gadajamal, and Evgeny Golovin created a studies center based on the long-time shared interests called the New University Project. Duggan was baptized at the age of 6 in the Russian Orthodox Temple of Machurinsk by his great-grandmother Elena Mikhailovna Kargoltseva. He enthusiastically adheres to the faith of the Russian Old Believers, a traditionalist Christian sect that separated from the canonical Orthodox Church in the mid-17th century. Early career and political views. Duggan in the 1980s was a dissident and an anti-communist. Duggan worked as a journalist before becoming involved in politics just before the fall of communism. In 1988 he and his friend Gadajamal joined the nationalist group Amyat. He helped to write the political program for the newly refounded Communist Party of the Russian Federation under the leadership of Gennady Zyuganov. In his his 1997 article, Fascism, Borderless and Red, Duggan proclaimed the arrival of a genuine, true, radically revolutionary and consistent, fascist fascism in Russia. He believes that it was by no means the racist and chauvinist aspects of National Socialism that determined the nature of its ideology. The excesses of this ideology in Germany are a matter exclusively of the Germans, while Russian fascism is a combination of natural national conservatism with a passionate desire for true changes. Quote, Waffen-SS and especially the scientific sector of this organization, ANANIB, was an intellectual oasis in the framework of the National Socialist regime, according to him. Duggan soon began publishing his own journal entitled Elementi, which initially began by praising Franco-Belgian Jean-François Thiriart, supporter of a Europe from Dublin to Vladivostok, consistently glorifying both Tsarist and Stalinist Russia. Elementi also revealed Duggan's admiration for Julius Evola. Duggan also collaborated with the weekly journal Den, a bastion of Russian anti-cosmopolitanism previously directed by Alexander Prokhanov. Duggan was amongst the earliest members of the National Bolshevik Party and convinced Eduard Limonov to enter the political arena in 1994. A part of hardline nationalist NBP members, supported by Duggan, split off to form the more right-wing, anti-liberal, anti-left, anti-Kasparov aggressive nationalist organization, National Bolshevik Front. After breaking with Limonov, he became close to Yevgeny Primakov and later to Vladimir Putin's circle. Duggan claims to be disapproving of liberalism and the West, particularly American hegemony. His assertions show that he likes Stalin and the Soviet Union. We are on the side of Stalin and the Soviet Union. He calls himself a conservative and says, we, conservatives, want a strong, solid state, want order and healthy family, positive values, the reinforcing of the importance of religion and the church in society. He adds, we want patriotic radio, TV, patriotic experts, patriotic clubs. We want the media that expresses national interests. Formation of the Eurasian Movement. The Eurasia Party, later Eurasia Movement, was officially recognized by the Ministry of Justice on the 31st of May 2001. The Eurasia Party claims support by some military circles and by leaders of the Orthodox Christian faith in Russia, and the party hopes to play a key role in attempts to resolve the Chechen problem, with the objective of setting the stage for Duggan's dream of a Russian strategic alliance with European and Middle Eastern states, primarily Iran. Duggan's ideas, particularly those on a Turkish-Slavic alliance in the Eurasian sphere, have recently become popular among certain nationalistic circles in Turkey, most notably among alleged members of the Ergenekon network, which is the subject of a high-profile trial. Duggan's Eurasianist ideology has also been linked to his adherence to the doctrines of the traditionalist school. Duggan also advocates for a Russo-Arab alliance. The Reborn Russia, according to Duggan's concept, is said by Charles Clover of Financial Times to be a slightly remade version of the Soviet Union with echoes of 1984 by George Orwell, where Eurasia was one of three continent-sized superstates including Eastasia and Oceania as the other two and was participating in endless war between them. He has criticized the Euro-Atlantic involvement in the 2004 Ukrainian presidential election as a scheme to create a cordon sanitaire around Russia, much like the French and British attempt post-World War I. Duggan has criticized Putin for the loss of Ukraine, and accused his Eurasianism of being empty. Quote, In 2005, Duggan founded the Eurasia Youth Union of Russia as the youth wing of the international Eurasia Movement. Ukraine gave Duggan a 5-year entry ban, starting in June 2006, and Kiev declared him a persona non grata in 2007. His Eurasian Youth Union was banned in Ukraine. In 2007, the Security Service of Ukraine identified persons of the Eurasian Youth Union who committed vandalism on Hovla in 2007. They climbed up the mountain of Hovla, imitated sawing down the details of the construction in the form of the small coat of arms of Ukraine by tools brought with them, and painted the emblem of the Eurasian Youth Union on the memorial symbol of the Constitution of Ukraine. He was deported back to Russia when he arrived at Simferopol International Airport in June 2007. Before war broke out between Russia and Georgia in 2008, Duggan visited South Ossetia and predicted, "Our troops will occupy the Georgian capital Tbilisi, the entire country, and perhaps even Ukraine and the Crimean Peninsula, which is historically part of Russia anyway." Quote. Afterwards he said Russia should not stop at liberating South Ossetia but should move further, and we have to do something similar in Ukraine. Quote. In 2008, Duggan stated that Russia should repeat their Georgian scenario in Ukraine, namely attack it. In September 2008, after the Russian-Georgian war, he did not hide his anger to Putin, who dared not drop the other shoe and restore the empire stance on Ukraine and role in Russian politics. Aleksandr Dugin supports Putin and his foreign policies but has opposed Russian governments due to their economic policies. His 2007 quote, "There are no more opponents of Putin's course, and if there are, they are mentally ill and need to be sent off for clinical examination. Putin is everywhere, Putin is everything, Putin is absolute, and Putin is indispensable," was voted number 2 in flattery by readers of Kommersant. In the Kremlin, Duggan represents the War Party, a division within the leadership over Ukraine. Duggan is seen as an author of Putin's initiative for the annexation of Crimea by the Russian Federation. He considered the war between Russia and Ukraine to be inevitable and appealed for Putin to start in military intervention in eastern Ukraine. Duggan said, "The Russian Renaissance can only stop by Kiev." During the 2014 pro-Russian conflict in Ukraine, Duggan was in regular contact with pro-Russian separatist insurgents. He described his position as unconditionally pro-DPR and pro-LPR. A Skype video call posted on YouTube showed Duggan providing instructions to separatists of south and eastern Ukraine, as well as advising Ekaterina Gubareva, whose husband Pavel Gubarev declared himself a local governor and after that was arrested by the Security Service of Ukraine. On the 31st of March 2014, Oleg Batyarov, a member of the Eurasia Youth Union of Russia founded by Duggan, was arrested. He had trained a group of about 200 people to seize parliament and another government building, according to the Security Service of Ukraine. Duggan also developed links with far-right and far-left political parties in the European Union, including Syriza in Greece, Attica in Bulgaria, the Freedom Party of Austria, and Front National in France, to influence EU policy on Ukraine and Russia. Duggan stated he was disappointed in Russian President Vladimir Putin, saying that Putin did not aid the pro-Russian insurgents in Ukraine after the Ukrainian army's early July 2014 offensive. In August 2014, Duggan called for a genocide of Ukrainians. Alyukhoinish of the Kharkiv Human Rights Protection Russian group said that the influence of Duggan's Eurasian ideology on events in eastern Ukraine and on Russia's invasion of the Crimea was beyond any doubt. According to Vincent Jover, Duggan's radical ideology today became the basis for the internal and foreign policy of the Russian authorities. So Duggan is worth listening to, in order to understand to which fate the Kremlin is leading its country and the whole of Europe. However, according to Alexander Nevzorov, if we had had Turgenev and Duggan instead of Putin, there would have been hell for all of us to pay. They would have unleashed a European and world war without a shadow of a doubt, without considering consequences at all. But Duggan and Turgenev did not have the slightest impact on what is going on in the Kremlin, and did not even get coaching there. In another publication, Nevzorov said, "Beliefs are only proven by being under bullets. Another prescription does not exist. I do not understand why Milinov and Duggan are not there yet." On the 10th of October 2014, Duggan said, "Only after restoring the Greater Russia, that is the Eurasian Union, we can become a credible global player. Now these processes slowed down very much." The Ukrainian Maidan was the response of the West to the advance of the Russian integration. Quote, he described the Euromaidan as a coup d'etat carried out not by the Ukrainians but by the United States. America wishes to wage the war against Russia not by its own hands but by the hands of the Ukrainians, promising to wink it up to 10,000 victims among the peaceful population of Ukraine and actually demanding the victims. The United States led to this war. The United States carried out the coup d'etat during the Maidan for the purpose of this war. The United States raised neo-Nazis, Russophobes to the power for the purpose of this war. Duggan said Russia is the major driving force for the current events in Ukraine. Russia insists on its sovereignty, its liberty, responds to challenges thrown down to it, for example, in Ukraine. Russia is attempting to integrate the post-Soviet space. As Israeli political scientist Vyacheslav Lyakov states, if one seriously takes the fact that such a person as Aleksandr Dugin is the ideologist of the imperial dash for the West, then one can establish that Russia is not going to stop as far as the Atlantic Ocean. In the 2014 article by Dmitry Bykov, YTV, Aleksandr Dugin and Galina Pishniak crucified a boy. Channel 1 Russia's use of the ad story by Duggan and Pishniak about the allegedly crucified boy as a pretext for escalating the conflict was compared to the case of Belarus. On the 9th of July 2014, Duggan on his account of Facebook wrote a story that a 6-year-old child was allegedly nailed down to an advertisement board and shot to death before his father's eyes. On the 16th of July 2014, Novaya Gazeta provided the videotaped evidence that its correspondent Yushin Feldman walked along the main square in Slavyansk, trying to find out from a local old woman if they had heard of the murder of the child. They said such an event did not take place. The website Change.org hosted the petition of citizens who demanded a comprehensive investigation with identification for all persons involved in the fabrication of the plot. On the 2nd of October 2014, Duggan described the situation in Donbass. The humanitarian crisis has long since been raging on the territory of Novorossiya. Already up to 1 million, if not more, refugees are in the Russian Federation. A large part of the inhabitants of the DPR and the LPR simply moved abroad. Quote, in the end of October 2014, Duggan advised the separatists to establish dictatorship in Novorossiya until they win in the confrontation. Rhetoric about the fifth column. The typical rhetoric about the fifth column as foreign agents is permeated with hatred for them and used by Duggan for political accusations in many publications. For instance, in his 2014 interview published by VZGLYAD and Komsomolskaya Pravda, he says, a huge struggle is being conducted, and, of course, Europe has its own fifth column, its own Bolotnar square-minded people, and if we have them sitting idly and doing nasty things on DOZHD, Europe is indeed dominated and ruled by the fifth column in full swing. This is the same American riffraff. He always sees the United States standing behind all the scenes and behind the Russian fifth column hired by the United States. According to his statement, the danger of our fifth column is not that they are strong, they are absolutely paltry, but that they are hired by the greatest godfather of the modern world, by the United States. That is why they are effective, they work, they are listened to, they get away with anything because they have the world power standing behind them. Quote, he sees the American embassy as the center for funding and guiding the fifth column and asserts, we know that the fifth column received money and instructions from the American embassy. According to Duggan, the fifth column promoted the breakup of the Soviet Union as a land continental construction, seized the power under Boris Yeltsin, and headed Russia as the ruling politico-economic and cultural elite until the 2000s. The fifth column is the regime of liberal reformers of the 1990s and includes former Russian oligarchs Vladimir Guzinski, Boris Berezovsky, former government officials Mikhail Kasyanov, Boris Nemtsov, Vladimir Ryzhkov, artistic, cultural, media workers, the Echo of Moscow, the Russian State University for the Humanities, the highest ranks of the National Research University Higher School of Economics, a significant part of teachers of the Moscow State Institute of International Relations, a minority part of teachers of the Moscow State University. Duggan proposes to deprive the fifth column of Russian citizenship and deport the group from Russia. I believe it is necessary to deport the fifth column and deprive them of the citizenship. Quote, however, in 2007, Duggan argued, there are no longer opponents of Putin's policy, and if there are, they are mentally ill and should be sent to prophylactic health examination. Quote, in 2014, Duggan in an interview to Der Spiegel confirmed that he considers the opponents of Putin to be mentally ill. In one of his publications, Duggan introduced the term the sixth column and defined it as the fifth column, which just pretends to be something different, those who are in favor of Putin, but demand him to stand for liberal values. During the 2014 Russian military intervention in Ukraine, Duggan said that all the Russian sixth column stood up staunchly for an attack. As he asserts, we need to struggle against the fifth and sixth columns. Russian-American artist Mikhail Chemyakin says, Duggan is already inventing the sixth column. Soon, probably, there would already be the seventh one as well. The fifth column is understandable. That is, we, intelligentsia, lousy, dirty, who read Camus. And the sixth column, in his opinion, is more dangerous, because that is the personal entourage of Vladimir Putin. But he is naive and understands nothing. And as for Duggan, he can tell him who to shoot to death and who to imprison. Maybe Kudrin and maybe Medvedev. According to Duggan, the whole internet should be banned. I think that internet as such, as a phenomenon, is worth prohibiting because it gives nobody anything good. Quote, in June 2012, Duggan said in a lecture that chemistry and physics are demonic sciences, and that all Orthodox Russians need to unite around the president of the Russian Federation in the last battle between good and evil, following the example of Iran and North Korea. He added, if we want to liberate ourselves from the West, it is needed to liberate ourselves from textbooks on physics and chemistry. Duggan has characterized his position on the Ukrainian conflict as firm opposition to the junta and Ukrainian Nazism that are annihilating peaceful civilians, as well as unacceptance of liberalism and American hegemony. loss of department headship. During conflict in Ukraine, Duggan also lost his post as head of the Department of Sociology of International Relations of Moscow State University. In 2014, a petition entitled "We Demand the Dismissal of MSU Sociology Faculty Professor A.G. Duggan" was signed by over 10,000 people and sent to the MSU rector Viktor Sadovnichi. The petition was started after Duggan in an interview expressed his opinion on how to deal with the Ukrainians. Duggan claimed to have been fired from this post. The university claimed the offer of a department chairmanship resulted from a technical error and that he would remain a professor under contract until September 2014. Duggan wrote the statement of resignation from the faculty because it was necessary to be reappointed to the Moscow State University, but the appointment did not happen, so as a result he is no longer a staff member of the faculty and a staff member of the Moscow State University. Action against Duggan. At the end of October 2014, Sergei Kurginin, the leader of all-Russian movement Essence of Time, brought an action against Duggan because Duggan called Kurginin a traitor and accused him of destroying Proselkov in the following words: "Possess supporters of traitor Kurginin, who as now it turns out is working for oligarchs, Yukos and Israel," declared Sasha Proselkov main enemy, after he along with Gubarev did not allow denigrating Russian hero Igor Strelkov with impunity. Duggan added, "Kurginin crossed a red line. The ideological controversy is one thing, the physical destruction of Russian patriots is another one." Sanctions. On the 11th of March 2015, the United States Department of the Treasury added Duggan, as well as his Eurasian Youth Union, to its list of Russian citizens who are sanctioned as a result of their involvement in the Ukrainian crisis. In June 2015, Canada added Duggan to its list of sanctioned individuals. Trump endorsement. In February 2016, Duggan endorsed the candidacy of Donald Trump for President of the United States. In fiction, he is a character of Yevrazijskoy, a poem by Dmitry Bykov. Duggan's works. Several of Duggan's books have been published by the publishing house Arctis, an important English-language publisher for traditionalist and new right books, which specializes in works by prominent fascists and neo-Nazis. Konflikte der Zukunft, die Rückkehr der Geopolitik. Bonus. Last War of the World Island, the Geopolitics of Contemporary Russia, Arctis, Eurasian Mission, An Introduction to Neo-Eurasianism, Arctis. Martin Heidegger, The Philosophy of Another Beginning, Washington Summit, Putin vs. Putin, Arctis. Pneumahia, Voyny Uma, Trilogoza, Apollon, Dionys, Kabela, Akademiczeski Projekt, Wypoiskatiomno Gologoza, Akademiczeski Projekt. The Fourth Political Theory, Arctis. Die Vierte Politische Theory, Arctis. The United States and the New World Order, Video editorial. Popkultura iz anarchy vremeni, Amphra. Filosofia Voyny, Yorza, Absiatna Rodina, Arctagia Tsentr. Templiary Proletariata, National Bolshevism Initiatia, Arctagia. Osnovi Geopolitiki, Geopolitichesko Budushi Rossi, Arctagia. Metaphysica Blagoi Vesti, Pravoslavny Esotericism, Arctagia. Mysteria Evratsi, Arctagia. Conservativna Revoliutia, Arctagia. Conspirology,